Rain hammered the cracked windshield as Ella tightened her grip on the steering wheel. Her old blue sedan coughed like it might give up any second, but she pressed harder on the accelerator. She was late again, second time this week, and she couldn't afford to lose another job. Outside, the town of Ridgehaven was still waking up. Shop lights flickered on, coffee steam rose from corner cafes, and people hurried under umbrellas. But Ella barely noticed. Her only focus was getting to the Rusty Spoon, the small diner where she worked morning shifts. She parked in a rush, grabbed her apron, and sprinted through the rain. The bell above the door jingled as she entered, her shoes squeaking on the floor. "You're cutting it close again," said Marcy, her manager, crossing her arms. I know, Ella said, panting slightly. The car wouldn't start. Marcy sighed. "Just get to your tables, please." Ella nodded and forced a smile as she grabbed the coffee pot. The diner smelled like bacon and hope, thin but still there. At the back booth, near the window fogged from the rain, sat an elderly man she hadn't seen before. His coat looked a size too big. His hands trembled slightly as he unfolded a newspaper. There was something about him, a quiet sadness that felt out of place in the morning rush. Ella approached, coffee pot in hand. "Good morning, sir." "Coffee." He looked up, eyes a soft gray, like smoke fading. "Please," he said, his voice gentle but tired. As she poured, she smiled. "You new around here?" He nodded. "Just moved in last month." "Name's Mr. Linton." "Well, Mr. Linton, welcome to Ridgehaven. Breakfast here's not fancy, but it'll fill you up." A faint smile tugged at his lips. "That's all I need." She jotted his order and walked back toward the counter, glancing at him once more. There was something familiar about the way he looked out the window, like he was waiting for something or someone. While waiting for the eggs to fry, Ella leaned against the counter, lost in thought. If you believe small acts of kindness still matter in today's world, go ahead and like this video right now, leave a comment, and subscribe, because sometimes it's those tiny moments that change everything. Later that morning, when she brought Mr. Linton his food, he thanked her softly and placed a small photograph on the table beside his plate. It showed a woman, younger than him, holding a bouquet. "She was my wife," he said when Ella glanced at it. "Passed away last year." "I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He nodded. "I still talk to her sometimes. Feels strange, I suppose." "Not strange," Ella replied. "Sometimes talking helps more than silence." He smiled, and for the first time that day, the heaviness in his face lifted. Over the next few weeks, Mr. Linton became a regular. Same booth, same breakfast, black coffee, oatmeal, and 2 slices of toast. He always brought that same photograph, setting it on the table like a silent companion. Ella found herself looking forward to his visits. Between her double shifts and her mother's hospital bills, her days were exhausting. But seeing him, talking to him, gave her something to hold on to. One afternoon, as the diner quieted after the lunch rush, Mr. Linton looked up from his coffee. "You remind me of her," he said. "Your wife." He nodded. "Kind, even when the world wasn't." Ella smiled, though her eyes burned slightly. "She sounded wonderful. She was. You would have liked her." Weeks turned into months. They talked about books, old movies, and the strange joy of second chances. But one snowy morning, Mr. Linton didn't show up. Ella noticed immediately. The booth by the window was empty. She tried to brush it off. Maybe he was just resting. But when the next day came, and the next, and he still didn't appear, worry crawled under her skin. On the 4th day, she found herself dialing the local hospital during her short break. "Is there Mr. Linton admitted there?" she asked. "Yes," the nurse replied softly. "He's in room 207. Ella grabbed her coat and ran through the snow. When she arrived, Mr. Linton looked frail, smaller than she remembered. But his eyes lit up when he saw her. "You came," he whispered. "Of course I did," she said, setting a small coffee cup on the table beside his bed. "Can't start the day without your usual." He chuckled weakly. "You'll spoil me." "Too late," she replied, forcing a grin. "You already are." Over the next week, she visited him every evening after work. Sometimes they just talked. Other times, she'd read to him from the books he loved. One evening, As she was about to leave, he took her hand. "Thank you, Ella, for treating me like I still matter." She squeezed his hand gently. "You do matter." He smiled. "You have no idea how much that means." When she returned to the diner that night, she felt something in her chest, warm, steady like a small light she hadn't felt in years. A week passed, and Mr. Linton began to recover. The color slowly returned to his cheeks, and he could hold his cup without trembling. When he was finally discharged, Ella made sure his booth at the diner was waiting, fresh coffee, his usual oatmeal, and that small framed photo already sitting by the napkin holder. When he walked in that morning, the bell over the door gave a soft ring. The regulars turned to look, smiling. Ella hurried from behind the counter, almost dropping a cup in her excitement. "You look better," she said, helping him to his seat. "Thanks to your terrible hospital coffee," he teased, and she laughed. He took a slow sip of his drink and looked around the room. "You know," he said quietly, "places like this keep towns alive. People forget that. Then I guess you're part of what keeps this one breathing," she said. He smiled faintly. "Maybe for now." That morning, he stayed longer than usual. When he finally left, he paused by the door, looked back, and said, "Take care of yourself, Ella." She nodded, though the words felt heavier than they should have. Days went by, then weeks, and everything seemed normal, until one quiet Thursday morning. It was just after 8 when a black car pulled up outside the diner. 2 men in dark coats stepped out, followed by a woman holding a folder. Their entrance drew every eye in the room. They walked straight to the counter where Ella was wiping mugs. "Are you Ella Thompson?" the woman asked. Ella froze. "Yes, is something wrong?" The woman gave a gentle nod. "We represent the estate of Mr. Henry Linton." The coffee pot slipped slightly in Ella's grip. "Estate?" she repeated, voice trembling. "I'm very sorry," the woman said softly. "Mr. Linton passed away last week." The words hit her like a quiet storm. The diner seemed to fade. The sound of sizzling bacon, clinking plates, all of it felt distant. "He was just here," Ella whispered. "I know," the woman said, handing her a sealed envelope. "He left this for you. He asked that we deliver it personally." Ella took the envelope, her hands shaking. Around her, customers had gone silent, their eyes fixed on the scene. She stepped aside, heart pounding, and opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter and a folded document. The letter read, "Dear Ella, you may not realize what your kindness meant to an old man who thought the world had already forgotten him. Your smile, your patience, your care, those small things gave my days light again. In my life, I've owned many things, but nothing as valuable as the feeling that someone still cared. I want to make sure that light you gave me keeps shining. With this letter, I'll leave you my home on Willow Bend Road and a small account that should help with your mother's care. You made me feel like family. It's only right that I return the favor. With gratitude, Henry Linton." Ella's eyes blurred. Her hands trembled as tears streamed down her cheeks. She looked up, and the regulars were watching quietly, their faces soft with disbelief and sympathy. The lawyer stepped closer. "Mr. Linton said you were the only person who ever treated him like he still mattered," she said. "He wanted to thank you properly." Ella couldn't speak. All she could do was nod, clutching the letter to her chest. That night, she drove to the address written on the document. The small house stood at the end of a quiet road, its porch light glowing softly against the dark. She hesitated before stepping inside. The house smelled faintly of old books and pine wood. The shelves were lined with novels, photographs, and keepsakes, a lifetime captured in frames and dust. On the desk near the window sat a picture she hadn't seen before. It was of her and Mr. Linton at the diner, both laughing over a spilled cup of coffee. Someone had taken it months ago. He had framed it. Her knees grew weak, and she sat down slowly. For the first time in years, Ella cried. Not from exhaustion or fear, but from gratitude. The next morning, she went back to the diner early. The same regulars filled the booths, the same smells of coffee and toast hung in the air. But everything felt different. When a young man walked in, looking tired and lost, she smiled at him the way she once smiled at Mr. Linton. "Find yourself a seat," she said warmly. "Coffee's on me." He blinked, surprised, then smiled back. And as she poured that cup, she realized something. Kindness doesn't fade when the person is gone. It multiplies, moves forward, touches someone new. That day, she hung the photo of her and Mr. Linton behind the counter. Not as decoration, but as a reminder, every act of kindness plants a seed you might never see bloom, but it always grows somewhere. The story spread quietly through Ridgehaven. People who had ignored the lonely and forgotten began to notice them again. Some said it was because of the waitress at the Rusty Spoon who inherited a house from a stranger she cared for. Others said it was because of the man who never stopped believing in small kindnesses. But Ella knew the truth. It was both. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the rooftops, she locked up the diner and walked home. The same old car sputtered beneath her, but her heart felt lighter than it ever had. She whispered softly into the air, "Thank you, Mr. Linton." Somewhere she hoped he heard. And as the narrator's voice fades, if this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who still believes in kindness, and subscribe for more stories that remind us there's still good left in the world. Before you go, tell us in the comments, what's one small act of kindness you believe can change someone's day? Because sometimes one simple act is enough to change everything.